And I'd like to go ahead and call for the roll.
Frank Garcia.
Here.
Lisa Gainey.
Here.
Supervisor Begay. Councilmember Garcia.
I am present. Hello, guys.
Pamela Buzzard. Shannon Greenwood.
Here.
Catherine Moore. Here. And Katie Quick.
Here.
Cool. All right. Well, our first item on our agenda is public participation. If there is someone that would like to address the board, you can make that known now.
I'd like to address the board.
Okay, that sounds good. Could you please give your name for the minutes? And you are limited to 5 minutes speaking time.
Okay, yeah, my name is DJ, and this is in regard to a dispute at the public library system, where I was just harassed just a bit too much by staff there. Just in public comment. And to begin, I just want to thank everybody at the library board for being here today. And I just I just wanted to say that what's happened to me is just it's sort of like a third world problem. I've had too many problems lately. I'm somebody that has been very badly personally injured, and it just doesn't make sense to go any further. I wanted to mention that I did email several people regarding this matter. I just don't feel good about what's happened to me. I understand what it looks like when there's a judge, jury, and an executioner, and that's Jennifer Stasinopoulos at this time, because when she failed to conduct an investigation and instead just became somebody that viewed me on a camera system, which means there might be bias regarding a protected characteristic involved, such as my skin color or my gender and things like this. She failed to meet the burden of proof required to trespass and convict somebody. Because of that, I feel today that I've been even more injured. And I just wanted to ask the library administration, does it make sense to block somebody from information for just one more month?
DJ, open meeting law does not allow us to respond to questions until they're placed on the board agenda.
I understand that. That's all it is. It's does it make sense to give me just one more problem? And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of the meeting today. I'd like to have access to information. In other words, the library system without being threatened, without being harassed, and without being trespassed for no reason. So if this goes further, I understand I have, a year, 2 years to file. I just, I am somebody that will get there eventually. I will eventually get there. It just doesn't make sense to go any further legally. It makes sense to just kind of squash this and to not make a big fuss out of it. That's my opinion. Otherwise, we just start doing discovery. We just start looking around. We just start taking photos. We just start recording. We just start doing all this stuff that doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is just getting along. It's just a library. I'm just asking the library administration, will you please step in and just squash this? That's all. That's all. Thank you for hearing me. Have a wonderful day, okay?
Okay, thank you for your remarks.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, and on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of the April 24th minutes. Do we need a minute to look over those minutes? If so, take that time now. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I can make a motion to approve the minutes from April.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the April 24th minutes, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the ayes carry, and the minutes for April 24th are approved. The next agenda item is information, communications, and disclosures from board liaison and staff. Do we have anything under that item today?
I actually have something. I didn't know if Supervisor Begay would be here and that she might have wanted to speak with the board, but since she isn't here, I just wanted to say that the Board of Supervisors, when we held our budget meeting with them, approved a 0.02 increase to the library funds for this year. So that's going to help us to purchase the bookmobile and also help us with all the rising costs of materials and staffing. So
What is that, 2%?
it's
Under
point
2 cents
2
per $100,
Oh,
the tax valuation.
Cool, that's great. Has there been a decision on which bookmobile? We had talked about two different versions.
they approved the larger bookmobile, which, well, they actually asked for a recommendation for from staff. So all of us sat down and talked about the benefits and drawbacks of each, and we ultimately went with the larger M2 because it's more similar in terms of service level that is being provided right now because we have such a large bus now. So this is a little bit of a step down, a little more manageable, but not way down to something quite small.
Does it still require a CDL?
No.
Okay.
No more searching for a librarian with a CDL. When you're hiring a bookmobile.
Actually opens up the door a little bit.
Yeah, so looking for a unicorn.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. All right. Okay. And then the next item on our agenda is Linda's report, and that is included in your notes a little further down.
Okay, I'll just point out some of the things that I wanted to highlight. You can see in your report that we have some fantastic photos of some kids using the PALS mobile. And it's so fun to see what their favorite topics are. There we have one kid there who's into trains and ships. And you can also just see them selecting their books on the PALS mobile. So some great photos there I wanted to share. And then on the next page, I wanted to point out under reference the job fair that we partnered with the city HR department to offer. And that was a great success. We had all kinds of city departments here, fire, police, water, HR, library had a table, and Parks and Rec. And so job seekers were able to speak directly with people from the city, learn more about the jobs available. And also HR was on hand to provide resume and cover letter help. We had a great turnout for that. On that same page, I just wanted to talk about the recycling program that was held here at the downtown library. It was very informative and really helpful in getting the word out about which things really can and can't be recycled here in the city of Flagstaff, because I know that people, including myself, get confused about which things really are recyclable, and it's different in different places. We're also going to offer that one later in the year at East Flagstaff. It's just such a beneficial thing to offer to the community. Then on the next.
On that item, did they mention, is there anything on their website, the City of Phoenix, that you can go and like look at the list?
At the city of Flagstaff, as far as the recyclables, I'm
Right.
sure there must be something online about what is and isn't recyclable,
Yeah.
but I haven't researched that.
They did mention that.
I wasn't at the program, so
Oh,
they
oh.
I think they have something like this.
Oh, okay.
We have it taped to our trash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
So they
Look
do
at
have
you for
something
noticing
like
that.
I know. Well, look at that one, me.
Another item I wanted to point out under Collection Management Services, or CMS, we had a donation of a Braille collection that contains some Christian books and also children's educational toys that help to teach the Braille alphabet and numbers. So that was donated and the friends got it to us, and then CMS staff got it all cataloged and it's out there for the public.
Great.
So that was a great donation to get. And then several things on the next page that I wanted to talk a little about. I don't know if any of you have noticed in coming to the library, but our nice new front entry ramp has had a lot of digging around it. And so we're still trying to work on repairing the snow melt system, because as you can imagine, with a ramp that is made to be accessible, we really don't want to have snow and ice on it, so it's real important to get that fixed. And it's just had leaks that have been hard to find, and facility staff thinks that they've found the problem and then a leak pops up somewhere else. So that's why you're seeing all of those areas of digging. So fingers crossed. I think the more we find, the sooner we might have that all resolved. And then under county libraries, good news out of Forest Lakes, the local school district is showing appreciation for the library by helping with some extra funding for their storytime activities, and also to purchase some additional reading materials. So that's exciting, and I think really speaks to the partnerships that they have formed with their community up in that area. Was there a question, Amelia? I thought I saw.
A comment in the chat about the construction being a big selling point.
Oh.
Katie's child to come to the library.
Oh.
That's great.
Up at the Grand Canyon Community Library, still some reorganizing going on up there of the collections, just to make them more accessible, more intuitive to users as they look for specific materials in that collection. Another nice story out of the Grand Canyon came from the new supervisor up there, Amy Zink, who helped a patron learn how to use the Libby app and download audiobooks. And he described knowing that as something he thinks will be life-changing for him.
Wow.
Because he has a hard time focusing on print books. And so audiobooks are this whole wonderful new world for him. And then in Tuba City News, there are some nice photographs in your report about the library, the cleanup they had of the grounds around the library. So they got a bunch of kids together, the kids did a cleanup, and then afterward, the library provided lunch for them. And so some great photographs. They worked very hard. They had a whole truckload full of litter that they collected. And you can see from the photos, there was a lot to pick up there. So that's great to hear about that. The bookmobile has expanded its stops for the summer, because there are some places that it only goes in the summer just because of road conditions. And so some of these places they've been visiting haven't seen the bookmobile since 2019 when it last ran. And the bookmobile librarian reported that some of them were bringing books back that they checked out in 2019. So we were happy to get the books back and update the people's cards, and so they're back up and running for their bookmobile service. So those are the main things I wanted to highlight, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the things I spoke about or other things on my report?
I don't have a question, but I can relate to the sentiment about the Libby when we go on road trips. Like that is a lifesaver for the four of us to like have something to listen to while we're driving on long road trips. So yeah, we do a lot of Libby stuff. So I can relate to that comment from that person. So.
All right. And then, let's see, I think our next thing on here, we have reports and discussion items. Oh, wait, I'm gonna hang on time out of minutes. The county branches update, we're moving to the next meeting, is that correct? Or is it this meeting we're moving?
Yes, so
Okay.
this one is interlibrary loan.
Okay, all right, and who's presenting that?
That is Emily Fenya, who's
Hi,
joined us
Emily.
online.
Hi, I'm going to try to share my screen. So let me know if this works. Can you see that?
It is loading.
Okay,
I have a big banner that says you are sharing your entire screen.
but you're not seeing anything? Oh no. Okay. Okay, still nothing?
No, but
Okay.
you shared it with me, so let me see if I can.
I see that banner too.
Let me try one more time and then I can just read it and provide the slides for afterwards.
Or if Amelia has the slides, she might be able to share her screen,
Okay.
if that would work for you.
Didn't download it. Let me just download this real fast. Technology is so wonderful when it works. Even when it works. Oh, wait, what's going on? Okay, let me. I've never tried presenting Teams, but I'm gonna give it a shot.
Okay, beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Emily Fenda. I'm a library specialist and my focus is the Interlibrary Loan Program. I've been at the library for about a year and a half. The first year was as a temporary library specialist with the reference team. And since about last October, I've been a permanent staff member and working on the interlibrary loans. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm pretty much just going to be reading my slides, so you don't have to, take notes or anything like that, and these will be made available afterwards. So a little overview of interlibrary loan. Interlibrary loan is a service offered by most libraries across the country and also internationally. No library can own every book ever published, except for the Library of Congress. I think they own a copy of everything published in the US. Through interlibrary lending, patrons have access to titles that are not part of their local library's collection. Upon request, lending libraries send titles to borrowing libraries, who then make them available to patrons to check out. When a patron is finished with an ILL title, they return the book to their local library where it is processed and returned to the lender. Here at the Flagstaff Public Library, we use ILL to borrow books we do not own for our patrons and also lend out books to other libraries within the USA. ILL enables patrons to access more materials while saving libraries money by not having to purchase every title that patrons may be interested in. Interlibrary loan, sorry about that. Interlibrary loan programs are essential for increasing access to materials. For example, small rural libraries with small collections and limited budgets can benefit from ILL by giving their patrons access to a national network of library materials. It's also very useful for patrons who have eclectic tastes, for example. If you have very niche interests, we might not have a lot of titles on your particular area of interest. And it's a good way to find sort of more niche titles for folks like that. Okay. Library is very interested in sharing. Flagstaff Public Library is a member of a reciprocal, no-fee ILL lending group called Libraries Very Interested in Sharing, or LVIS. This means that we do not charge borrowing libraries any fees for the books that we share with them, and lending libraries also do not charge us a fee for borrowing their materials. At Flagstaff Public Library, we only choose to borrow books from libraries who do not charge fees for ILL. This means the cost to provide and use the service for the library amounts to the cost of shipping materials, and for the most part, we reuse shipping materials, and the cost of shipping or stamps. This also means that we do not pass any fees on to our patrons for the use of this service, unless a patron loses or damages a book borrowed from a lending library, in which case the lending library might have certain fees for replacing that damaged book, which we do end up passing on to our patrons. But this pretty rarely happens. It is free to use for our patrons, making it an extremely accessible way to expand the resources we can offer. Our ILL policy. So this is, oops, sorry. Good?
What? Yeah.
Are we good? Okay, sorry. So our ILL policy, this is what it looks like on our website. You can navigate there from the homepage and hovering over to using the library at the top of the page. Once you do that, you'll get a little drop-down menu, which interlibrary loan will be one of the options, and you just click on that. That will take you to this page. From here, patrons can register for a first-time ILL account. It is separate from your library account, so you do have to sign up for a separate account. And you can't see your ILLs from your patron account when you sign on normally on our webpage. You can also access frequently asked questions on this page, find my contact information, and review our loan policy. What's in our policy? Our ILL policy covers terms of use of this service, as well as who is eligible to use ILL. And this is the full text from the website, so I'll go over it briefly. Lines that are bolded are sort of the action points. So the Flagstaff City Coconino County Public Library may request from another library materials that are not available to patrons locally. In order to request a title through this service, the patron's account must be active and in good standing. That basically means a patron's account must be current, so it can't be expired. And good standing generally means a patron can't have exorbitant fees or charges on their account at the time that they want to register for an ILL account. This service is limited to full privilege library card holders with verified contact information, including a phone number and or email address. Which means that to be eligible for ILL service use, a patron must have a full adult library card. So juvenile or temporary card holders are not eligible for ILL service. And verified contact information is, of course, just so that we can get in touch with them about the books when they are available and when they need to be returned. Patrons may have no more than 6 interlibrary loan active requests on their account at the same time. The Flagstaff City Coconino County Public Library honors any restrictions and or checkout periods the lending library may place on the material, which is essentially explaining to our patrons that we must uphold the terms put on book use by the lending library, by the owner of the material. So a lending library might give a patron 6 weeks with one of their books. A patron might request that we renew that period, and it's up to the lending library to determine whether or not they can provide a renewal of that title or if they need it to be sent back for their own patrons. The patron is responsible for all materials borrowed from another library. The patron will pay any charges assessed by the lending library, which is sort of what I mentioned before. If a patron damages a book or loses a book, responsibility for the cost of replacing or fixing that material falls to the patron, not to us, not to the library. In order to check out the item, the patron must present the library card on which the interlibrary loan request was placed. Items are held until their due date as determined by the lending library. If an item is not picked up within the time allotted, the loan request is canceled and the item is returned to the lending library. If this behavior continues, ILL services may be suspended. This also rarely happens, but if a patron repeatedly is late with returning ILLs or repeatedly turns ILLs that have been minimally damaged, we sort of reserve the right to revoke their ability to use the ILL service. I don't think I've ever had that happen so far, though. And finally, the Flagstaff City Coconino County Public Library does not interlibrary loan audiovisual materials, including DVDs and audiobooks. Okay, so this is a brief snapshot of our ILL statistics. We track and report ILL usage statistics every month. You can see from the table in this slide the total number of times that we are contacted at our reference desk and also at the ILL office with ILL related questions, and that's the reference questions field. Also the total number of ILL requests received, both from borrowing and lending items, the total number of items borrowed for Flagstaff patrons, and the total number of Flagstaff owned items lent to other libraries. The ILL position was vacant for a couple of months last summer. So you'll see for August and September of 2024, a couple of zero values for items loaned to other libraries. And that's because we have the ability to turn off our lending service within the ILL system that we use. We can't turn off borrowing, so we just we can adjust our time period for response, which slows the process down a little bit. Let's see. Oh, so the rate of items borrowed for Flagstaff patrons is exactly the demand for titles that are not owned by our library. So that is reflective exactly for the number of times patrons from Flagstaff ask for a title that we don't own. The rate of items lent out to other libraries depends on a couple of different things. It's the amount of titles requested, which is usually a pretty big number, and that shrinks. What we can actually send out shrinks based on how many of those titles we actually own, because sometimes we do get requests for titles that we don't actually own. If an item requested is already checked out, or if it's a new book, because when books are categorized as new, we tend to wait until they've left the new designation to start lending them because they're so popular. We also tend not to lend items that are physically located at the East Flagstaff location just because of logistics of having them sent over to the downtown library. And items that are really popular, even if they're a few years old, that have been checked out recently or still circulating a lot, we also hold on to those for our own patrons.
We've got a question in the room, if you don't mind.
Hey, what is the difference between the total requests received and the items borrowed? There seems to be like a big difference in those.
Yeah, so the total requests received is it combines the total number of borrowing requests, which is our patrons asking us to find a book for them from another library, and the total number of requests that we get to lend a book to a different library. And that's a really high number because we get a lot of requests from other libraries to lend the materials. But by the time I process those, a really good chunk of them end up being books that are already checked out by our patrons or that we don't actually own. And so that number gets reduced pretty drastically. That's like the biggest difference in terms of the statistics. And I'll also say that whenever I find that we have a request for a title that we don't actually have in our collection, and that could be because it was weeded out, for example, I make a list of those catalog numbers and send them to a member of our cataloging team so we can remove them from the database that basically advertises that we have them available. So it's kind of constantly correcting what other libraries see we have available to lend them. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Okay, and this is the last one. I've gotten a lot of really great feedback from patrons. I tend to interact in person with a lot of patrons who use ILL sometimes, and most express that they absolutely love that we have the ILL service. They're very appreciative of it. They're appreciative that we don't ask them to pay anything for it. Sometimes when patrons first find out that this is an option, they get really excited because they've been looking for a book. They're already sort of disappointed that we don't have it. And then they hear about ILL and they sort of light up because they realize like, that's not the end of the road. We can do more to try to find this book for you. And it's very rewarding to see those reactions. Kind of like what I said earlier, we have a lot of patrons with that have like unique interests or niche interests, or they're doing personal research on like obscure areas that are almost more academic. And so when you can find those materials from like, for example, even a library out in Pennsylvania, it's really rewarding to see how happy they are to have access to those things. So that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
I have one other question. If you're looking to check out a book and the title is here, but maybe there's like 10 holes on it, so it's going to be a really long time, can you do the ILL for something like that?
No, we don't do ILL for that. Part of the general ILL policy is we exhaust all of our local resources before we resort to ILL, which means that if there's a new book that's really popular and there are 10 people on hold, we can't ILL that one. But we might suggest that someone contact the library or do a materials request suggesting that maybe we purchase a second copy if it's becoming even more popular than we anticipated. But we can't do an ILL in that case.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question about what you said earlier about a separate account, a separate library account, because I know I've done ILL. The last time was a while ago, so I've forgotten. But so are you saying that I would have had to make a new account just for that?
Yes. So when you sign into your library account normally on our website, that is separate from your ILL account. You can access the ILL account also on our website through that sort of navigational path that was on that one slide under using the library. When you're on that page, you have the option to make a new account, and you just have to create a new account. That's also where you would log into an existing one. We often recommend that patrons use their library card as their username, so it's easy to remember. But you would have the option to set a completely different username and a password. That's where you would log in to access your ILL portal, where you would make requests and see what requests you already have and what status they are.
Was that the recommendation to use your library card number? Was that on the thing? Like, did that show up on the screen when it would say, please create an account or something?
No, it doesn't
So I
actually.
probably didn't know to do that. I have no idea what my login would be. I was just curious.
Well, I can also, if you want to, I can also look up your account in our ILL system. Any staff member at the reference desk can do that and let you know if it's expired. We can reset your password for you. We can help you navigate all of that.
Okay, thank you. And sorry if I sound bad. I'm muting myself because I'm on day 11 of COVID and I've been coughing up like crazy. Ugh.
Well, I'm sorry. I hope you feel better.
I just had a question out of curiosity, like how big or how vast is the network of libraries that don't charge and I guess to piggy on that is how often is it or how common is it that there's a book that just can't be found through this system, if that makes sense?
So I would have to look up actual numbers for you for those questions if you want sort of more data, but it's a pretty large network for libraries that don't charge any fees. So I mean, there's almost never been a time where I haven't been able to find a book for somebody because of cost. Mostly when I can't find a book for somebody, it's because it is a very old book that's no longer been published, that's a little bit obscure, or sometimes academic texts that just are not held in the collections of public libraries. I am able to request books from some academic libraries. For example, NAU is a lender that has the reciprocal agreement with us, so they don't charge us fees if we find a book in their collection, which is wonderful. That way our patrons do get access to some more academic materials if they're looking for those. I've I've even had libraries send me genealogical material from like their special collections. And most other ILL library staff members are also, we're very driven by increasing access. So I've had other ILL staff members be willing to photocopy non-circulating materials and send them as a PDF for our patrons at no cost, which is really wonderful.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Emily, appreciate it. That was really informative.
Yeah, that was
Thank
great. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, and with that, that brings us to the last item, unless there's anything else for the good of the order.
We have a policy. Oh,
There's
Yeah.
the action item.
Circulation policy.
Very, very past that.
Okay, all right. I'm in the right spot then. Oh, yes, we do have to review the circulation policy.
It was very informative. I learned a lot.
Oh, about ILL
Well, that, plus
and the circulation policy.
circulation policy, kind of behind the scenes of how things work.
Amelia, as a person on the team that reviewed the circulation policy, are there any kind of larger items that were addressed that you'd like to speak to, or should we just ask for yea or nay approval of changes?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was trying to make things as clear as possible. So one area that hasn't been as clear is on our temporary privilege cards. For instance, it wasn't ever stated in the policy that youth aged 12 to 17 can get a temporary library card and then can use that to access library materials. And so we wanted to kind of clean that up, put that out there. A lot of what you'll see on here is a lot of cleanup, like, okay, fix this formatting, that kind of thing. What else might stand out, Jennifer? We did change the borrowing, how many items a temp card can borrow. Decreased it from 8 to 4, I think is where we landed.
Yes.
On that. And updated some of our, some of the data and tables and stuff, like we had ILL was only 5 items, but as Emily just told us, it's actually 6.
There were a couple of things we added to see.
Yeah, we didn't have a section for our in-library use items. We didn't have a section that talked about the library of things or the seed library. So those all got added just to make it actually reflective of everything. Maybe not everything, but as much as we could of what we offered.
Okay. So that policy is down at the end of your packet, and it is green and red lined. If folks want to take a look at it, we can take a few minutes to do that. Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve the circulation policy.
Amelia, can I ask a question about it? Is this, I'm so sorry if I missed this in a previous meeting, but is this for just the downtown location, or does it apply to the 4th Street location as well?
It applies to 4th Street as well.
Okay, thank you.
And what about the branches?
It applies to our branches, to a City, Grand Canyon, Forest Lakes. It does not apply to the affiliates. They have their own policies for this, yeah.
And then if I could just add that Damaris was also there to, so she brought that viewpoint in for the countess as well.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll take a motion if someone wants to make one.
I move that we accept the circulation policy.
Need a second?
Second.
Sorry, I wasn't looking. Was that Lisa?
It was Pam.
Thanks.
All right, and all those in favor of approving the circulation policy, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And all those not wishing to approve it, say nay. Okay, hearing none, the ayes have it, and we have approved the circulation policy. And now we're to information items and requests from board members. Do we have any of those today? Okay, hearing none. Our next meeting, we will have, of course, Linda's report and a report on the library, seed library. And our next meeting is June 26th. And with that, I will call for adjournment of the meeting. We'll see everybody in June.
Thank you guys. Have a good week.
Thank you.